Alright, people, midweek report time. So, lot to talk about in this, as I always say. There always is a lot to talk about. I will be doing. I'll be doing a preview for the fights that are happening this week. We'll talk a bit about Dubois versus Usyk. But I guess the two stories that are kind of at the forefront, certainly today, are Alicia Baumgardner having adverse analytical findings, positive tests. The statement from her in Matchroom, and this is an interesting one here. I think we'll start with this. Is that it's reported now that Conor Benn will now face an appeal over his positive drug tests from UKAD and the British Boxing Board of Control. They have both appealed the NADP's decision to lift his suspension, clear him to fight. It's claimed the NADP decision was forced heavily on UKAD's inability to rule on VADA test and did not include an examination of science explaining why clomiphene was found in Benn's system. Eddie Hearn had previously insisted that this was not a decision based on jurisdiction. That is quite interesting, actually, to be honest. I hadn't actually read it. I'd only really just heard they were going ahead and doing that. That's actually that's actually really quite interesting now, to be honest with you. I haven't read that there. Right, so there was a part of me that felt as though this wouldn't come to fruition, as in that UKAD and the British Boxing Board of Control wouldn't go down this road, because I just kind of thought, do they really have the funds? You know, what if this gets ugly and you go down a long, drawn-out road which costs you money? I know the board and UKAD, they've had issues. Well, certainly the board with Frank Warren many, many years ago, where Warren nearly bankrupted them. And I kind of thought that they wouldn't want to go down that road again. Maybe they're not leaving themselves open to any legal liabilities there, but you just don't know. In terms of the whole Conor Benn situation, it's gone on nearly a year now. It has been one of the most farcical things I've seen, in a sense of it's taken a year for it's still not even solved yet, for anything to come out. For me, like, the ultimate kind of salt in the wound, or the only ultimate kind of, rubbing salt in the wound, basically, would be if they turn around and they just said, right, we're going to backdate you. And it's like, all this rigmarole, all this appeals, this and this and this and this, just to say, basically, we banned you for a year and you backdated it, so you've already served it. The reason why I would say that would be just farcical is because after all the, appeals, this and this and this and this, could you not have just done that earlier? Because I wouldn't be shocked if that's where we end up with this. Now, I don't know, like, it's a strange one. I think what Eddie Hearn has said, I think he said it in the most recent interview we had with Simon Jordan, that upon reflection, it could have been handled differently. And I think that if I was Eddie Hearn, I would have told Conor Benn from the get-go, keep your mouth shut, which is something that Conor Benn didn't do. And I think Eddie Hearn even acknowledged the fact that some of the interviews he was doing and the behaviour he was having or coming out with, I know Eddie Hearn was championing it, but you have to kind of look at it in context and say, realistically, you're alienating yourself from people. I think the reason, and some people have often said, with the Conor Benn situation, why the public really have a disdain for Conor Benn when he is one of many fighters who's failed drug tests over the years. And I would always say, yeah, he is one of many fighters who's failed drug tests over the years, but his behaviour throughout has been, it's just been like a spoiled little child. And I often wonder, was Conor Benn, because Conor Benn isn't the brightest, I wonder, is he someone who's always kind of had things his own way in his life? Because he grew up in splendour. And I guess maybe not really having many real world experiences of how, the real world isn't all fun and games. And maybe just assumed, that, if I dig my heels in, it'll all go away. And it's like, well, if only it worked like that in the real world. It certainly doesn't. You can dig your heels in all you want and say this and that and the other, but if there's an issue, it's certainly ain't going to resolve itself like that. And I guess Eddie Hearn is probably looking at that and thinking, you know what, yeah, that was the wrong way to do it. You've really peeved off a few fans, because he never really had any issue with fans. Conor Benn was a popular fighter, certainly the last time he was in the ring against Chris Van Hayden. And I think that has rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. In terms of the Alicia Baumgardner situation, I'll read the statement here verbatim from Matchroom. Matchroom can confirm today, this was actually yesterday, I should say, by the way, when this statement came out. that Alicia Baumgardner returned an adverse analytical finding as part of a random anti-doping protocol instituted voluntarily for her bout with Christina Livandacha in Detroit on July 15th. Matchroom was informed of the results on the 12th of August. The application regulatory authorities are also aware. We defer to such bodies for further action and guidance. A full investigation is conducted. Matchroom is committed to promoting a clean and fair sport for all athletes and will assist Alicia and her team during this time, affording her the appropriate due process. As we wait to receive more information, Matchroom will not be making any further comments. Now, apparently the agency who conducted these tests that Alicia Baumgardner had the adverse analytical findings in is a company that Matchroom used himself, and Matchroom have really been spearheading more testing. And some people would say that, and I've seen some people say it, because yes, the last three certainly reasonably high profile failed drugs tests have been Conor Benn, Dylan White and Alicia Baumgardner. There have been others, Lou DiBella. I was going to say Lou DiBella had a fighter fail the drugs test there a couple of months ago, and of course he often says, that drug the other, but when it's one of his fighters, there's a logical explanation. Of course there is. But with her and Matchroom, they're putting themselves at the forefront of this. And when you do that, you are going to figure more stuff out. You're obviously going to find more analytical findings. You're obviously going to find people coming up dirty. And people have been saying that this is, proof that Eddie Hearn is this, that, and the other. And it's like, Eddie Hearn is the promoter. He's not a nutritionist. He's not in the camp with these guys. There are people actually implying that Hearn is the kind of the kingpin of all this. And it's like, think of that logically for a sec. He's putting money out of his own pocket and the fighter's pocket to do this. And he doesn't want his fighters popping. He's not a nutritionist. He's not in the camp with these guys. Think logically for a sec when you say stuff like that. No. That is just absolutely unbelievable. I think it's just as simple as, I think that it's a wider issue than Matchroom. I think it's an issue in the sport of boxing as a whole. And I think that if you do more testing, more people will come up dirty. It's inevitable. It's just the way it is. And I think that that's what's happening here. I think Matchroom are probably doing the most out of anyone in terms of drug testing. Hence the reason why we're getting a lot more, well, certainly more high profile Matchroom fighters to say. Alicia Baumgardner, I mean, that girl has been looking bigger and bigger and bigger every single time I've seen her. That girl is looking butch, seriously. So I remember me and Dell talking about this a few months ago, because look, just full disclosure, I never really, when you look at women's boxing, you're obviously going to say, do you like that girl in terms of looks and stuff like that? Alicia Baumgardner has never really been my kind of type of girl. Whereas I know when she came around first, Dell, Blue Collar Sports, was like, yeah, she's top of my list now. She's his favourite. That's each his own. And I was like, no, I'm not really. She doesn't really do anything for me. And the more butch she's got, Dell's even been like, yeah, I'm not really as into her anymore. Now, this was prior to all this, so there was that. But never really been my cup of tea. Alicia Baumgardner, good fighter and very interesting to watch, but never been my cup of tea in that regard. In terms of some of the other stuff that's going on, Deontay Wilder's manager, Shelley Finkel, states that he's optimistic a deal could be done for Deontay Wilder versus Anthony Joshua early next year. Interesting. Let's see. I done the video today where I basically talked about Anthony Joshua potentially having an interim fight against Tony Yoka. And, if I was in Deontay Wilder's team, and I know Shelley Finkel is not, Shelley Finkel is what Shelley Finkel is. He is we'll leave it there. But I will be advising he have a tune-up fight against someone reasonably low level. You don't need to put it on pay-per-view, but just get him out for a run out and just kind of test the waters. He's been out of the ring nearly a year now, and if he doesn't fight until next year, it'd be well over a year. And someone like Deontay Wilder, who is aging, and someone like Deontay Wilder who relies a lot on timing. Because Deontay Wilder, he's very accurate with the right hand, he's very fast with it, but he needs to have his timing to a T. The longer you're out of the ring, the more likely it is that you're going to struggle with the timing. And someone like Anthony Joshua, he can punch as well. How do you know Joshua won't touch Wilder before Wilder touches him? In terms of Canelo versus Charlo, we had the press conference there this week. It surprised me how big Charlo looked compared to Canelo. And bear in mind, Canelo's been at 168 for years now. And Charlo, I was looking at Charlo just doing the face off, and I was thinking, how did these, like, you know, when you look and you really do stop and you think, like, how do they do it? How do some of these guys, when you see just how big they look, like, he's big. I wouldn't say he's going to be as big as Canelo, but he's big. And you're like, how do you do 154 pounds? Like, you actually look and you think, like, this, what in God's name are you doing to get down to that weight? And how much do you be weighing outside of camp? Because, god damn, he looked massive out there. But Canelo was asked about Terence Crawford. Obviously, Terence Crawford talked about having a fight with Canelo Alvarez, doing it at 158 pounds. As soon as I heard that, I was like, not a chance. And Canelo says, I can't go down anymore like that. When they ask about Gervonta Davis, it's the same. Everyone's going to say he's too small. Nobody going to give him credit. Canelo Alvarez will never, even if he cut his leg off, couldn't probably do 158 pounds now. Hell to the no. Hell no. But, you know, Alvarez, I suspect that moving forward, because Alvarez obviously is on a 3-fight deal with PBC. I suspect, because he talked about fighting both Charlos. It wouldn't shock me if that's the road he goes down, if he fights Jamel first and then Jamal, because I'm kind of looking at that and thinking, like, yeah, like, who realistically, like, other than David Benavidez, after those two, who else are you going to fight? Because Spence's taking a big L, and God knows when he's going to be back. So that's the situation there. In terms of some of the other news that's going around, well, let's talk about the fights that are happening this weekend. So obviously tomorrow night in the York Hall, there is a Frank Warren card. Now, I have to say, the card isn't exactly filling me with a great deal of optimism that it's going to be, you know, a showstopper or anything like that. The main event, though, was good. I like the main event. Dennis McCann versus Eno Belute. Belute is probably a solid European level fighter. He is. He's a solid European level super bantamweight. He's still only 29 years old, but he had that fight against Andrew Keane, and I think that fight will take a lot out of him. Now, he did win it, but he was down twice in that round. Belute normally has a good chin. He's a win over TJ Dehaney, beat the living crap out of David Oliver Joyce back in 2020. I remember that. He really beat the living crap out of him. Had a majority decision, lost to Michael Conlon. That really could have went either way, that fight. And again, that's why I was saying, like, Michael Conlon shouldn't go near a world title, because that fight really could have went either way. Belute was really game in that fight. And Belute is a solid opponent. So Dennis McCann, if there's any chinks in his armour, they're going to show up in this fight. They will. Now, I just worry as well as Belute maybe a little bit worse for wear now. You don't know. But it's an interesting main event. I like this main event. That's very good matchmaking by Frank Warren, and I like that fight. In terms of the rest of the undercard, Nathaniel Collins versus Raza Hamza. All right, that's a featherweight. Ryan Gardner versus Juan Jose Anitez. Okay, Raven Chapman versus Lily Dos Santos Ferdado. Never heard of her. 9-0. Brazilian. Alright, never heard of her. But I've heard of Raven Chapman. I've had her on the channel, I think at least once anyway. So that's the card in a nutshell. Then we have obviously the card on Saturday night, which is Galalia 5 versus Tommy Frank. I think Eddie Hearn is right to do this, to just bring the levels down a little bit for Galalia 5, because they did try and step him up, I think, in his third or fourth fight. And that was a really rough affair, was that. So he's in there. Cyrus Patterson, who is an interesting watch, I have to say, in there against Conan Walker. Jordan Flynn against Keane Baker. Was that a rematch? I'm pretty sure that they fought, but oh yeah, they did. They did, and lost. Well, Keane Baker won that fight, but close. Okay, so they're having a rematch. Keane Baker always comes to fight Solomon Darcy's. Haven't really been impressed with Solomon Darcy's now, I have to say. He's fighting a guy called Chris Thompson. 12-4, two stoppage losses. Who are they two? He went the distance with Evgeny Ramon. Really? He goes the distance a lot, that guy. Well, not a lot, but enough. Evgeny Ramon is 38 years old, and he's done absolutely sweet F all. I mean, he got a knockout over Sergey Lakovic in 2020. I mean, why are you even fighting Sergey Lakovic in 2020? Bragamonte. This is the guy who stopped Deontay Wilder in the amateurs. So he's in there. And who else stopped this guy? Again, no one really on his resume, but I haven't really been exactly keen on Solomon Darcy's now, I have to say. I've watched a few of his fights and he's not impressed me that much, really. So That is the Next Gen show that's on. Now, I also want to briefly touch on the Daniel Dubois, because I want to just talk about the undercard, because Daniel Dubois is facing Alexander Usyk next week. And the closer we get to this fight, the more excited I'm getting for it. Now, for me, I've talked about it already. I'll do a more detailed prediction video probably on Saturday or Sunday. And I want to do a few more videos, maybe start recording tonight or at least tomorrow, and get them up about, keys to victory for both guys. In terms of the undercard, there's some names here. Dennis Bracek. I think he fought on... Didn't he fight on the yard? But no, that was a different fighter. Alright, that wasn't him. But he's fighting Anthony Yigit. Anthony Yigit is a European level fighter at this stage. Probably seen better days as well. That's on the undercard. Hamza Shiraz versus Dmitry Matyatvo. Again, butchering these names. They are very difficult, some of these names to pronounce. But a lot of names on the card here, on the undercard. It's a big undercard, a really big undercard. But I don't recognise an awful lot of them. I wonder, is this... Yeah, K2 are obviously doing this as well. And obviously Usyk has Usyk 17, which I think is his managerial. It might even be a promotional company as well. So there's that as well. So that is the situation with the card that's happening next week. It is next week. And, I'm looking forward to seeing how Daniel Dubois gets on, full disclosure, many of you will know, I don't expect him to win. I don't. I expect Alexander Usyk to win this fight. I reckon he'll win it pretty straightforward, but a lot of people, Hatman, I've seen talk about this, saying don't underestimate youth. And that is something you need to take into consideration, that Daniel Dubois is a lot fresher, and he is not him and Joshua are they're similar in terms of dimensions, but they're very different in terms of their style. Whereas Joshua certainly now is more the boxer puncher, safety first. Dubois has always been a seek and destroy merchant. He's always been someone who looks to ragdoll, impose himself on the fighter he's fighting. And Dubois' physical strength is tremendous. I mean, he is right up there in terms of heavyweights, one of the physically most strongest. People say, Joshua's good strength, fury. Dubois is right up there. Obviously against Joe Joyce, he ran into a brick wall. That was man against boy that night. It really was. But Dubois is up there with physical strength and punching power. It does make for... When you look at Dubois and you look at his assets and his attributes, you do think, okay, if he can pull it all together, I'm not putting a penny on him winning, but if you put it all together, you can see how there could be some potential for an upset in there. Again, I personally won't be picking him, right? But I definitely can see why so many people seem to give Dubois more of a chance than myself certainly does. I can definitely 100% see that. 100%. I'm looking forward to the fight. I definitely, for one, will be doing a watch along. I'll definitely be paying for it 100% because I think it still is a decent heavyweight scrap. I like the heavyweight. I'm dying to see how Alexander Usyk looks. I also seen in the build-up, right, to the card that's been happening this week, Frank Warren, yet again, just every week it's a different story when it comes to the Tyson Fury situation. So I seen him in an interview recently where he was now claiming that actually Tyson Fury had signed for the Alexander Usyk fight, and that it's the Saudis who are causing the issues, not having the stadium built, neglecting the fact that the Saudis in interviews have said that one of the fighters, and they didn't use the name, one of the fighters was asking for an amount which was astronomically higher than the fight was worth. And I wonder who that was, because Alexander Usyk definitely did sign his end of the contract. He was happy with everything. And lo and behold, all of a sudden, there's one of two fighters, and which one could it be? The fight all of a sudden has to get moved to the UK, where if one fighter was looking for an astronomical amount of money, moving it to the UK would mean that they'll never get close to that amount. And then they start making ridiculous demands. I mean, Frank Warren... You see, Frank Warren... When I talk at the start about this video about Conor Benn and Eddie Hearn not doing themselves favours from a PR point of view, Frank is doing the exact same thing, albeit it's not failed drugs test or anything like that, but it is a fighter blatantly ducking someone and Frank Warren thinking that the public are idiots. Because obviously that's what Frank thinks, that we're all idiots when we're not. And, the articles are all there for the world to see. Anyone can just date them and then boom, you have them. And you can say, oh, well, this doesn't quite jive with what you're saying, Frank. But that's Frank Warren. And, the Fury fans, the few of them who are still there, and there are a few of them, bizarrely, but there are still a few of them there, they will still believe everything Frank says. And it's mad, like, Frank will change the story, and all of a sudden that story is fact, and then it'll change again, something else will get added, and then all of a sudden that's fact according to them. But if you say, well, Tyson Fury's moving the goalpost, no, hate, it's this new age thing where it's like, hate, negative, hate, oh, hate. Yeah, when you use a word like hate and you just apply it to everything, it gets devalued so much that it really has no meaning. But look what we're talking about, Fury and his fans. What more? I'll leave it there. I won't go in. In terms of some fights that have been announced, this is an interesting one. Gilberto Ramirez versus Joe Smith Jr. reportedly being finalised for a catchweight fight on October 7th. Now, if both guys, depending on what the catchweight is, both guys prime for prime, I take Zurdo Ramirez to beat Joe Smith Jr. And I'll still take him to beat Joe Smith Jr. now. Interesting to know what catchweight. Both guys are units at 170. Both guys aren't really 175 pounders. Both guys are really cruiserweights. Excuse me, I just don't know how they can cut the weight. Zurdo was probably the bigger of the two. But I like that fight. I mean, both guys want to get back in title contention. There you go. Two former champions. And both guys lost their last fights. You know, Zurdo lost his last fight to Bivol. And Beterbiev lost to... Smith lost to Beterbiev, so that's interesting. Yalibak Ali Makala, Yalibak, I always butcher that name, has a fight lined up against a guy called Vincenzo Gualtieri. It's reportedly set to take place on October 14th. I was hearing rumours that Felix Cash was being lined up for a shot at him. Clearly not. He's got an opponent lined up there. And I think that's pretty much it for the time being. As I said, I'll leave it there. I hope you enjoyed the video, people. If you did, if you could, smash the like button to help your boy out. We're not too far off. We're only about 13, 14 subs off 12,400. So we've been really growing the channel a lot over the last couple of weeks. And long may it last. The sooner we can clear 12 and on to 13, you know yourself, it comes in roundabouts and 1 and 2 and a 3 and a 4. That's what we want to do. We want to get that cleared as quick as we can. So if you could, lads and lassies, smash the like button. Hope you enjoyed it. Shout out to Joe Stunner Boxing as well. He hit 2,000 subs last night. Delighted for him. It's another little milestone to tick off. Hopefully he can get 3 and then 4 and so on and so forth, because you put enough work in, you watch it grow and things happen. And yeah, and shout out to him last night, because he definitely, we talked a little bit backstage, and if I ever doubted going to London, which I don't, it's definitely well and truly on the cards now, because it just kind of was like making a lot of sense on certain things, and I was like, yeah, I need to get out of here ASAP. And we will. But you'll see a new surrounding soon enough, hopefully in the next few months. I'll leave it there. Hope you enjoyed it, people. Smash the like button if you could. Hit subscribe, of course, again, if you haven't already. But for now, I'll leave you. I'll talk to you. Peace.